I never thought an ordinary Sunday afternoon could turn into something I'd remember for the rest of my life. But here I am, still replaying those few minutes in my head, wondering how something so unexpected could change the way I see myself and him. Before I tell you what happened, I have to ask, where are you watching from? I love knowing the different cities and towns my stories reach. Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading them. That day had started like so many others. My sister's son, Andrew, was visiting for the weekend. He was always polite, quiet even, the kind of young man who didn't take up too much space in a room. I'd known him since the day he was born. I'd rocked him to sleep in my arms when my sister was exhausted, bandaged his knees when he scraped them running around my backyard, and cheered him on at his high school graduation. But now, at 34, Andrew wasn't the boy I used to look after. He was a man with his own calm confidence that seemed to settle over him like a well-worn coat. That Sunday, my kitchen smelled like home, a mix of fresh brewed coffee, warm bread from the oven, and a faint trace of lemon from the polish I'd used earlier. The afternoon light poured in through the small window over the sink, catching in the steam rising from the kettle. I was moving about in my soft slippers, sleeves rolled up, humming to myself while slicing vegetables for a late lunch. I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. At first, I didn't turn. Andrew was staying here, so it wasn't unusual for him to wander into the kitchen for a snack. But then, I felt something different. The quiet wasn't the casual kind. It was weighted, like there was something sitting on his tongue he wasn't sure how to say. "Margaret," he said, his voice lower than usual. I stopped mid-slice, the knife hovering above the cutting board. "Yes." I turned, catching his eyes. He was leaning slightly against the doorway, hands in his pockets. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to the elbows, and the sunlight from the hallway caught the side of his face, making the green in his eyes look deeper. I could see the hesitation there, but also a strange kind of determination. "I need to tell you something," he said, stepping further in. His tone was steady, but his jaw tightened like he was bracing himself. I tried to keep my voice light. "Well, you've got my attention. What is it?" He looked at me for a moment, and I could feel that look, not in a romantic way, but in a way that made me realize he was seeing me. Not just his aunt, not just a woman in her 60s in a kitchen apron, but me. "I've been holding this in for a long time," he began, his eyes flicking briefly to the floor before meeting mine again. "And I can't keep it to myself anymore." The kettle whistled sharply, making me jump a little. I turned back to switch it off, giving myself a second to breathe. I could feel a faint flush in my cheeks, though I wasn't sure why. "Go on," I said, my back still partly to him as I poured hot water into the teapot. "You've always been someone I could talk to. Someone I've looked up to," he said, his voice closer now. I hadn't even heard him cross the floor, but I felt the presence of him behind me. "But lately, it's different. I see you differently, and I think you should know that." My hand paused mid-pour. For a heartbeat, I didn't move. The sound of water filling the pot seemed louder in the silence that followed his words. I set the kettle down, turning slowly. He was standing just a step away, his expression open, almost vulnerable. There was no arrogance in his eyes, no game, just honesty. "I don't know if this will make things awkward," he continued, "but I can't keep pretending I don't notice how much I enjoy just being near you. Talking to you, hearing your laugh." I wasn't sure what to say. My instinct was to deflect, make a joke, but something about the moment told me that would be the wrong thing to do. Instead, I took a slow breath and met his gaze. "Andrew." I began, my voice softer than I expected. This is a lot to take in. I know, he said quickly, his hand brushing the back of his neck. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed you to hear it from me, not guess it. The tension in the room wasn't heavy. It was something else. A quiet, unspoken understanding hung between us. I realized then that I had felt a shift over the past months too, though I'd pushed it aside without thinking much about it. I stepped past him to place the teapot on the table, trying to steady my heartbeat. The air felt warm, almost too warm. He moved to sit down across from me, but his eyes stayed on mine as I poured the tea. We sat there, the steam curling between us, neither of us speaking for a moment. The kitchen clock ticked softly, marking the seconds. Finally, I said, "Thank you for telling me." My voice was calm, but my mind was still racing. I don't know exactly where this leaves us, but I appreciate your honesty. More than you know. He gave the smallest nod, and there was something in his smile. Not relief exactly, but a sense of release, like a weight had been lifted. Outside, a breeze stirred the branches of the oak tree by the porch, casting shifting shadows through the window. I sipped my tea slowly, feeling the warmth spread through me. The conversation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for now, we sat there, letting the truth settle in the space between us. The tea cooled between us, untouched, as if both of us were afraid to lift our cups and disturb the precarious balance of the moment. My kitchen, usually the place where I felt most competent and unflappable, suddenly felt like a stage set under bright lights. Every sound was exaggerated. The hush of the refrigerator motor, the tick of the clock, the faint sway of oak branches casting moving lace across the floor. I meant what I said. Andrew repeated quietly, as though the words might break if he said them too loud. But I don't want to make life harder for you, or for Mom. Hearing him add my sister into the circle of his confession steadied me in a strange way. Love, whatever shape it takes, always gathers witnesses. Families become part of the story even when you want to keep them at the edge of the page. I wrapped both hands around my mug and let the warmth soak into my fingers. "Andrew, I care about you," I said carefully, like picking my way across stones in a creek, one step at a time. "And I care about the kind of person you're becoming. That's the truth I can hold on to right now." He nodded, eyes lowered, and the tiny cowlick at the back of his head stood up the way it always had since he was little. For a heartbeat, I saw him at 7 again, freckled, suspicious of asparagus, coming to my house with a backpack full of action figures and a list of foods he wouldn't eat. I felt the tug of time, how it turns children into men while your own summers turn into winters without asking permission. "Can we talk?" he asked at last. "I mean really talk. Not just about what I said, but about everything I've been keeping to myself." I raised my eyebrows. "Everything sounds like a lot." He gave a breath of a laugh. "It is, but I think I'll walk in circles if I don't say it." "All right," I said, pushing the teapot aside, signaling my intention to make space. "Let's do what we've always done. Start with the beginning." He looked at the window instead of at me, the way people do when they're reaching for words. Outside, gray clouds were gathering, the kind that promise a soft, steady rain. He folded and unfolded his hands, then finally let his shoulders drop. "I keep feeling like I'm living in the wrong room of my life," he said. "Like I ended up somewhere I didn't mean to be. I've got a decent job. I'm not unhappy exactly. But there's this echo. Like I've been speaking into a space that doesn't speak back." I knew the echo he meant. Loneliness has a particular acoustics. "When did you start hearing it?" I asked. "Last year, mostly," he said. "After the promotion. Everyone kept congratulating me, and it should have felt good. But I went home, and there was just this quiet. I tried filling it with noise, podcasts, the gym, going out with friends. Nothing settled. Then around Thanksgiving, I came here and we made cranberry sauce together, and you let me mess up the pie crust without making a big deal of it. You laughed and said it's the cracks that let the flavor in. I don't know. Something lifted. It felt like my life had windows again. I remembered the afternoon. He'd rolled the dough too thin, and when we lifted it to the pie pan it tore like wet paper. I'd patched it with my thumbs, little overlapping leaves of pastry, and told him it would still bake, still turn golden. It did turn out pretty, I said softly. That's the thing, he said, meeting my eyes now. You don't pretend things aren't broken. You patch them. You accept the seam. And I started looking forward to coming here not because of the food or the holidays, but because of that seam. The honesty of it. The kettle had gone quiet long ago, its metal cooling with a soft tick. I poured more hot water from the thermos I keep for second cups. Old habits die hard when you've hosted a lifetime of Sunday meals, and slid a fresh mug toward him. He took it without looking away. But I don't want to burden you with my echo, he added. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know what you are to me. A place where the echo stops. He didn't say the other part out loud, the part he'd said in the first chapter of this unexpected conversation, the part that had made the air turn bright and strange, but it hung there anyway. I felt the edges of it pressing at my ribs. Under other circumstances, with other people, maybe the story would take a different road. But the road we were on had markers I refused to ignore. Family, respect, the long map of our lives intertwined. Guardrails can be loving things. Thank you, I said. But let's set some gentle boundaries while we're having this honest talk. Okay, he said immediately, relief flickering in his face that I'd brought the word boundaries in with a clean, non-judgmental tone. We can talk about anything, I said. Your loneliness, your job, the echo. We can even talk about me. What it's like being 62 when the world keeps insisting youth is the only interesting room to be in. But we will keep each other safe. This house has always been safe, Andrew. I want it to stay that way. He swallowed and nodded. I want that too. Silence again, but not the brittle kind. The rain finally began, feathering against the window, softening the day. I stood to get plates, impulse guiding me more than plan. When conversations go deep, I've learned to feed them. Bread, soup, something warm to keep hands busy when hearts are working. I ladled the vegetable stew I'd made earlier, set out the loaf I'd baked in the morning, still faintly tender at the center. He rose to help without me asking, finding the bowls and spoons, stacking napkins, moving with that unhurried economy he had even as a boy. We ate quietly at first, and something in the act of eating side by side, not across from each other, but shoulder to shoulder at the counter like co-conspirators in a gentle crime, eased the knot at the back of my neck. After a few spoonfuls, he kept talking, and I let him. He spoke about the girlfriend he parted from in the spring, not with drama, but with a mutual realization that they were treating their weekends like appointments. He told me how he'd begun waking before his alarm, staring at the ceiling in his apartment where he'd painted the walls himself but never hung pictures, because he couldn't settle on which parts of his life deserved framing. He admitted he'd been jealous at Christmas when he'd seen how easily conversation flowed at my table, how people unlatched their worries while they refilled one another's glasses. I can't name what that is, he said, but I miss it when I leave. It's not magic, I said. It's just consistency, and a lot of butter. He laughed, and the sound warmed the room better than the oven. I realized, with a pang I hadn't expected, that part of what he saw in me was simply practice. I'd had years to learn how to set a table so people wanted to stay. Years to figure out how to ask the kinds of questions that let people answer with their real faces. It wasn't a trick. It was intention, watered over time. You know, I said, settling on my stool again, after your Uncle James died, I thought the rooms of this house would always feel too big. I turned on the TV for company. I kept the radio low in the bedroom while I folded laundry. I'd forget the radio was on, then hear a voice and startle like someone had walked in uninvited. That's the echo you're talking about. After a while, I got stubborn. I told the house that if it wanted to be quiet, fine, I'd meet it. But I'd do it with fresh flowers on the table and a batch of muffins cooling on the counter. Turns out, quiet behaves better if you don't fear it. I didn't know it was that hard for you, he said. It was hard in 1,000 small ways, I said. But small hardness teaches you small courage. One day at a time courage. It doesn't look like much from outside, but it builds muscle. He sat with that, working a crumb of bread between his thumb and forefinger. The rain deepened, and a car hissed past on the wet street. The scent of thyme from the stew rose and fell in little waves. I wondered if years from now he would remember that smell and think of this precise hour, the way certain soups carry whole conversations inside them. I don't want to drag you into my figuring it out, he said. But I'd like to learn how to make a life that sounds right, the way your house sounds right. Is that something you could? I don't know. Help with? Not? He hesitated, flustered. Not as a project, as a person. I let the closeness of him become simple again. My sister's son, searching for footing. Of course, I said. I can help you learn the ordinary things. The things that seem too small to put on a list. He tilted his head. Like what? Like putting pictures on the wall even if you haven't written the perfect caption for your life yet, I said. Like inviting one person to dinner without planning a whole dinner party. Like learning one recipe you can cook without looking at your phone every 2 minutes. Like choosing a chair because it's comfortable, not because some article said it's in style. He gave me a look that was half amusement, half relief. That sounds doable. It is, I said. And while we work on your walls and chairs and recipes, we'll keep talking about the echo. We'll keep setting boundaries, and we'll keep honoring them. There are plenty of ways to be important to each other that make us more ourselves, not less. He breathed in sharply, a sound very close to gratitude. Thank you, he said again, but this time the words had weight, like he'd built them from something sturdier than hope. We cleared the bowls. He insisted on washing. I dried. The soft clink of dishes returned us to the dependable rhythm we've always known. Afterward, I took the photo albums from the living room shelf, the ones with the linen covers and the old-fashioned sticky pages, and carried them to the table. He sat, curious. I used to show you these when you were little, I said. Remember? He smiled. The picture of Mom with the disastrous perm, and the cake that collapsed in the middle because I slammed the open door, I said, flipping. There it was, 20 years ago, my sister and I laughing at a crater of chocolate, our hands dusted with powdered sugar like we'd been out in a gentle blizzard. Look, I said. Failure disguised as dessert. We turned pages and memory did its stitching work. Photos of summertime sprinklers, school plays with crooked crowns, 3 Thanksgiving tables in a row where someone had spilled cranberry down the center of the runner. In one, Andrew was 12, awkward and brilliant, holding the world's saddest papier-mâché volcano while grinning like he'd invented lava. I watched his eyes soften as time linked hands and circled back to the present. That's what albums do. They remind you that you're a story in motion, not a verdict. This helps, he said. I don't know why, but it does. It helps because it tells the truth about change, I said. It doesn't apologize for it. You've been many people already. You'll be many more. None of them have to cancel the others. He looked at me with a question forming and vanishing on his mouth. I waited. He looked down again, then tried a different door. Do you ever feel like the world stops listening to you after a certain age? Every Tuesday, I said, deadpan, and he huffed a laugh. But I also feel like I have better things to say on Wednesdays. That's the bargain of growing older. You're less sparkly to the world, but you glow truer to yourself. And you start noticing the people who glow, not sparkle. His gaze lifted to meet mine, the kind of look that could slide into something more complicated if we weren't careful. I let the moment be no more and no less than what it was. Recognition. Two people seeing each other clearly. Then I turned another page, and the spell gentled. By late afternoon, the rain eased to a fine drizzle. The house smelled like cinnamon now because I'd tucked a few sticks into a pot of water and set it to the lowest flame, my trick for gray days. Andrew stood, stretching, and glanced at the back door. Want to check the garden? He asked. You said the tomatoes were almost ready. We'll get wet, I warned. We'll survive, he said, with a smile that belonged equally to the boy he'd been and the man he was trying to be. We put on our old raincoats, mine ochre, his navy, and stepped into the soft, rinsed air. The backyard was the kind of green that looks like it's still being painted. Droplets clung to the basil like sequins. The tomato vines bowed, heavy with promise. I pressed my fingers to one glossy red fruit and felt the exact give that tells you it's time. Here, I said, guiding his hand. Twist gently. Don't pull. He obeyed, and the tomato let go with a quiet pop. He held it like an egg. There's something very grounding about this, he said. You know right away if you've done it right. Plenty of life behaves like tomatoes, I said. You look, you listen, you learn the feel of ripe. Not because someone told you a rule, but because you paid attention. We picked in comfortable silence until our basket filled enough to make the handle creak. We were both damp and slightly muddy by the time we went back in, and the simple mess of it, rain hair, flecked cuffs, a stray leaf stuck to my shoe, was exactly the kind of ordinary I wanted for him. I wanted him to know a life could be shaped out of such small things until the echo found something to answer. Back in the kitchen, we sliced a few tomatoes, sprinkled them with salt, and ate them standing by the counter. He closed his eyes. Good grief, he said. They taste like sunshine. They taste like time, I corrected gently. And attention. The sky outside started to pale toward evening, the cloud cover thinning. Andrew rinsed the knife and set it in the rack. He dried his hands on a towel and turned to me, a seriousness passing over his face like the shadow of a bird. I know I complicated things today, he said. I can't take back what I said, and I'm not sure I'd want to. But I want you to know I understand the guardrails. I'll keep them. I won't put you in a position where you have to choose between me and the peace of this house. I felt the pinch behind my eyes that comes when tears threaten, but I kept my voice steady. That's what respect sounds like, I said. Thank you. He looked around the kitchen, the worn edges of the butcher block, the little blue chip in the sugar bowl, the calendar with my tidy square letters filling the days. I was thinking, he said, suddenly shy. If it's okay with you, maybe I could come by on Sundays for a while. Not every Sunday if that's too much. Just some. We can cook, or fix the squeaky door, or put up those pictures at my place you were talking about. We can build whatever this is into something good, safe. The relief that rolled through me was gentle but strong, like a tide coming in right on schedule. Some Sundays, I said, that sounds just right. We made a list because lists make promises real. Hang the pictures, choose a chair, invite one friend to dinner. Bring basil for the windowsill. Make one recipe without looking at the phone. I wrote the items in pen on a yellow pad and stuck it to the fridge with the magnet shaped like a pier that my niece gave me years ago. He looked at the list like it was a map someone had drawn especially for him. "Do you think Mom will mind?" he asked, the question finally finding its courage. "I think your mother wants you to be whole," I said. "That's the shape of her love. And she knows this house is good soil. We don't need to give her every chapter right now. Just the headline. You're looking for your footing, and I'm helping. That much is true, and it's enough." He breathed out, and with it some of the afternoon's tension left his shoulders. We stood there a while longer, in that kind of quiet that isn't empty. When he finally gathered his jacket, the rain had stopped entirely. The oak leaves outside had dried just enough to begin their soft clatter in the breeze. At the door, he turned back. "You've always been my home base," he said. "I think I forgot for a while. I don't want to forget again." "I won't let you," I said, and meant it. After he left, the house did its evening shift, the way light withdraws from the corners, the way the floors hold the memory of footsteps. I moved through my little rituals, rinsed the mugs, turned the calendar to the next day, watered the fern by the sink, clicked off the stovetop. The smell of cinnamon drifted lightly through the air. In the reflection of the kitchen window, I saw my own face looking back. Older, yes. A little tired, but anchored. I touched the glass with my fingertips and felt that inner steadiness answer its own echo. I didn't replay every word he'd said. Instead, I listened to what remained after the words loosened and flew off somewhere to roost. Respect, boundaries, shared effort, the possibility of a life that hums instead of hollows. I thought of the tomatoes, the clean pop when ripe fruit knows to release, and understood that ripeness isn't permission to take, only readiness to receive what's offered with care. Before bed, I took the yellow list off the fridge and copied it onto an index card for him. I'd give it to him next Sunday, tucked into a bag with leftover soup and a jar of pickles. I wrote one more line beneath the others in small, steady letters. Talk honestly. Keep each other safe. I set the card on the counter, turned out the kitchen light, and stood for a moment in the comfortable dark, learning the shape of this new chapter by heart. Not a scandal, not a secret, but a simple vow to build something honest out of ordinary days.